All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. It was a big week in Washington. President Joe Biden released his plan to spend your tax dollars, and lawmakers sent him a bill to declassify U.S. intelligence about the origins of COVID-19. Our government reporter Garrett Berquist talked to Congressman Andre Carson.
Let's bring in Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
What do you make initially of the president's initial budget proposal?
He's opened the door to nationwide free community college. That's a major victory in my mind. You know, so many Americans, so many Hoosiers want to go to college, but they aren't given the chance to do so. Sometimes even working full time, taking night classes, it just isn't enough to pay for schooling. So the president's budget would effectively allow for students to access tuition-free programs that can lead to transfers to four-year institutions, and it prepares them for good-paying jobs. So I think equal access to education is so important to help even out the playing field for those young folks starting their careers, or even for adults looking to go back to school to get a higher paying job, or even a raise, or even a promotion. So I think President Biden's budget would give almost a $1,000, it's like maybe an $800 increase to the maximum Pell Grant, which is the main source of federal financial aid for students from low and moderate income families. So this could be the difference between a student attending college or not attending at all.
How do you see Ivy Tech and Martin University potentially getting a piece of this, and how would this affect their operations?
That's an excellent question. So Ivy Tech's going to benefit. I just met with the president and the team at Martin University. They're going to benefit from this, and we're going to fight for those dollars to come to great institutions like Martin University and Ivy Tech. So I think it means a lot for those minority-serving institutions. I just met with the president of Valparaiso. They're doing some great things in terms of meeting the needs of students in the region. And so there's a lot more to come from this proposal, and I hope it goes through. I hope it passes. We're going to support it, and it's going to help Hoosiers.
Now, this budget does include closing some tax loopholes and raising some taxes on the wealthiest Americans to reduce the deficit. However, there are no spending cuts. How can we get our deficit and our debt under control if we don't both increase revenues and cut spending?
We have a budget. The president addressed our deficit during the State of the Union, and reducing the deficit by making the wealthy and corporations pay their fair share, cracking down on fraud, cutting wasteful spending on big pharma, big oil, and other special interests, even working around ways that we could really maximize our military budget will do a lot for our deficit. And, the budget cuts the deficit by about $3 trillion over the next decade. And we're going to make sure that the wealthy and corporations pay their fair share. And we have to cut wasteful spending, as I said, and, removing special interests that don't serve us well is a big part of that effort.
I do want to touch on one non-budget related headline that came out late in the week. The House unanimously voted to declassify the intelligence surrounding the origins of COVID-19. You serve on the Homeland Security Committee. Tell me about your vote on that and why you feel it's necessary to declassify that information.
Well, I think with so much misinformation out there, as someone who sits on the Intelligence Committee, I'm the ranking member over the CIA subcommittee. I just had a meeting this morning with folks at the CIA and their chief medical officer. And, I think that there is a lot of misinformation out there that is deliberate. A lot of that misinformation is being influenced by state actors and some of our adversaries. But the American people deserve to know. It has impacted so many of us, so many of our loved ones, so many of our friends, so many of our coworkers. It's impacted many of us personally. And so that kind of information has to be brought out to the American people, because the pandemonium that it caused, the anxiety that it caused, it impacted a lot of companies. A lot of small businesses had to close down. A lot of Hoosier businesses were impacted. Downtown Indy was impacted. So the American people deserve some degree of transparency during this process.
Based on what you have seen and some of the recent reports that came out from some other government agencies, how do you view the lab leak hypothesis? Was this a lab leak?
Well, there are differing views as to its origin. I'm not at liberty to talk in depth about it, but what I will say is that as these things unfold, I think it's critically important that we not get sucked into this pool of misinformation that is online. Some of our adversaries and non-state actors are deliberate, and they want to sow seeds of doubt. They want to sow animus and animosity toward our government and distrust. And, these are tactics that have been used for decades and centuries when it comes to warfare and spycraft. And so my hope is that we can increase levels of transparency without demonizing any particular group of people or any race of people in the process.
Meanwhile, Republicans are criticizing the president's budget. Congressman Rudy Yoakum serves on the Budget Committee. He says the budget proposal Biden released shows he values higher taxes, more spending, less freedom, and even bigger government. Unfortunately, what it doesn't do is address the unsustainable fiscal situation we're in and the looming debt crisis the next generation will inherit unless we change course soon. All right, coming up, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden visits the Hoosier State, what she told an audience in Valparaiso. Next. Welcome back. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden is urging lawmakers to back the Biden administration's investments in community colleges. Her comments came during a visit to Ivy Tech's Clean Energy Lab in Valparaiso. Here's her full speech.
And good afternoon, and it's great to be back at Ivy Tech. I know it's exam week, so I'm grateful that many of you have chosen to spend your study break time here. Maybe you got, I don't know, extra credit. And thank you, Dr. Ellspermann, and all of you for welcoming us today. And I have to say, Madam President, that it's really impressive to me that the people you put in the front rows are your students, not the people with titles. And that tells me who you are. And you students are doing a great job. I mean, here you sat for like an hour and you didn't even take out your phones. So that's pretty impressive. So anyway, 2 years ago, my husband, President Biden, made a promise to rebuild the middle class. And you know what that exactly does? Who does that is community colleges. And as Joe has said, they provide the best career training in America. And yes. And community colleges are flexible and they meet students where they are. And they offer programs tailored to the communities that they serve. You know, high school education just isn't enough for so many of the jobs of the 21st century. But there are great careers out there that can be found with associate degrees and certificates and other job training, and paths that don't really require the 4 years of college. So today I had the opportunity to see the Flex Lab, where students are training for careers in clean energy. And they're building solar power systems and being trained to operate wind turbines and they're learning to wire homes and fix down power lines. You know, this program is giving them good paying jobs and protecting the planet for the next generation. And I also met Sandy. Wave your hand. The first woman to graduate with her technical certificate in electric line technology. And I love this. She enrolled in college at age 45, and thanks to the certification she received here, she's been working at NIPSCO for 12 years. Pretty impressive. And Sandy, it's amazing to see you forging this incredible career for yourself. And you're what this is all about and why we are here today. Dual enrollment courses, which a lot of these kids are in, registered apprenticeships, community colleges partnering with businesses to train workers in growing industries. You know, these aren't a Democrat idea or a Republican idea. They're American ideas championed by leaders from both parties. And for many years, they've helped students from all communities, red and blue, urban and suburban, you know, and everywhere in between, help you get the training that you need for the jobs of the future. And now we have something more to add to the equation. Millions of jobs in infrastructure, clean energy, and manufacturing that are being created by my husband, Joe, and his administration. Jobs just waiting. Jobs that are just waiting to be filled by students like you if we can build the pathways that all of you need. Your president and the leaders of the Departments of Labor and Energy understand that. And it's my honor to be joined by Deputy Secretary of Energy Dave Turk, who's been a partner and a friend to Joe since Joe's time in the Senate. And of course, our next Secretary of Labor, Julie Su. And so Julie is going to have the chance to use her decades of experience to help so many others find the American dream for themselves. So thank you both for joining me today. So career-connected learning that starts in high school provides access to 2 years of community college and connects to great jobs is the future of our workforce. It's how we grow the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. And Joe is bringing together his entire administration to make this future a reality. Across the country, we're seeing programs like this one bridge the gap between what students learn and the careers that you all will find. And we need more communities to follow Ivy Tech's lead. Because when they do, all students, no matter what their background, will have the chance to follow their passions and find a pathway to a great job. And together, we're going to be able to fundamentally transform what it means to make a living and make a life here in America. So to all the students here, good luck. You probably have spring break coming up, right? Yeah, because I'm giving midterms this week. So at the end of the week is our spring break. I think we can make it. So good luck. Have a great spring break. Thank you, Ivy Tech, for welcoming me once again. Thank you.
All right, coming up, we dive into the president's budget and the rest of the week's top headlines with Indiana's best political team. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics on this Sunday as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Ariel Brandy and Republican Whitley Yates. Good to see you both. Let's begin with President Joe Biden's budget. It relies on closing tax loopholes, as you know, to reduce the deficit. Ariel, how can we bring down our debt if we're closing tax loopholes but not cutting spending?
Well, I think first we have to have a Congress that can come to an agreement that we're going to get this budget passed. And right now, the likelihood of that is looking slim. But I do like what the president has proposed in his budget and what it could offer to Americans here in our country. So I'm really hoping that we can come together and agree that, yes, we want to get that deficit down, but we also want to make sure that Americans have the opportunity to have good quality education, healthcare, and everything else that we need.
So Whitley, we lose more than $1 trillion in tax breaks. Why not close some of that and make the wealthy pay their fair share, as some say?
Well, you know, the wealthy are the top 5%. They paid about 62% in taxes in 2020. And so I don't know how much more the Biden administration is going to attempt to squeeze those who are making over $200,000. He says 4, but that's in a household, so that's $200 apiece per person. And the truth is, he told us that he wanted to reduce the deficit, and that's not what this budget does. It actually increases it by $3 trillion. And he says he wants to shore up Medicaid, but in the budget, he just transfers money from one account to the other. So he's not generating any type of new income, and he's actually spending even more. But we also have to remember that our budget was already inflated from COVID. And so we're working off of a previously inflated budget. And so to add on to that is, to me, just not a wise idea at all.
Let's break down some of the numbers. We'll get into a couple of the key items here, okay, from the president's budget. Increase the maximum Pell Grant Award by $500. Funding for some free community college and tuition. Assistance at HBCUs and minority-serving institutions. Whitley, Biden is pitching this as an economic growth through job training. Is this a wise use of tax dollars, in your opinion?
Anytime we're able to support institutions of education, I think that it's a great thing. But the question that we have to ask is how we're going to pay for it, right? To have the ideas and the intentionality to want to do something for Americans is great, but the execution on how we're going to pay for it and how that impacts Americans is the problem. Yeah. And so if you want to help underrepresented communities and marginalized communities, that's great, but who's going to pay for it and where are we going to get the money from? And that's what we have yet to see in this budget.
Ariel, if we're trying for free universal community college, are we just setting ourselves up for a massive tax hike later on to support it?
I think we're putting ourselves in a better position to have global competitiveness when it comes to our job growth. You know, when we're looking at advancing racial equity and economic equity, especially when it comes to higher education, I think putting the money towards making sure that our education system is strong and we're providing people opportunities to be able to receive a higher education, we're making ourselves better as a country. So being able to provide that to low-income families and those who are looking to get into community colleges, I think we're providing them a great opportunity. And even more so here in the state of Indiana. We know that it's going to help advance Ivy Tech, and it's going to give an opportunity for Martin University to get the advancement that they deserve as a predominantly Black institution. So I think for us, it's a win-win when it comes to job growth, and it also provides an opportunity for folks to be able to receive an education in which so they rightly deserve.
We could probably do an entire half an hour on the budget, but I do want to get to some other headlines. Congress has unanimously approved a bill to declassify intelligence surrounding COVID-19's origins. Ariel, should the president sign this bill?
I'm going to leave that up to the president to make that decision. But since there are national security concerns, I do think that it is something for us to look into. There was so much misinformation that went around when it came to COVID-19. So I think this is definitely worth us taking into consideration.
Whitley, people's attitudes about COVID are so deeply ingrained. Will declassifying intelligence actually change anyone's minds regardless of what it shows?
Listen, whether or not it's going to change their minds, the American people deserve the right to know what happened with COVID, around COVID, and the transparency of that information from our government to the people is necessary for a democracy.
It seems like Ariel is in agreement there. She's
absolutely.
Yes, she says yes. Okay, so there are growing calls, as you know, in Congress to designate Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. This after 2 Americans were killed in Mexico and 2 others were briefly kidnapped. Whitley, could this do more harm than good by jeopardizing the relationship between that we have right now with Mexican law enforcement? I have about a minute left. I want to get you both in.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think we really have a great relationship with Mexico right now, with the fentanyl that's coming across the border, with issues with immigration, as well as how Americans are being treated abroad. I think we need to shore up our foreign affairs. They're not the strongest, not just in Mexico. Also in China, we're having issues, and abroad.
Ariel, your thoughts?
We need to be focused on our own domestic terrorism happening here in the United States. I mean, traveling here in this country and being gunned down is also an issue too. And so while we're going to focus on foreign affairs, I do think that we need to get a handle on our own gun situation and the crime that exists here in our own country.
I think.
All right, ladies. Well,
at the same time, we can.
Good to see you both. We're out of time. Unfortunately, we'll talk soon. Okay, thank you. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.